this is one thing that should, I think, the CFP board should be able to, or committee should be able to unite around, and that is we start laying the hammer down on Notre Dame. You want to play against the rules, then fine. We're going to give you an extra loss at the end of every single season. It may not show up on your board, it may not show up on your wall or in the record books, but in our minds, you've got an extra loss. You can be undefeated, but you're 12-1.
Yes, you decided not to participate.
Correct.
Therefore, that's
a forfeit.
That's a forfeit.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
So time to get on you need to get a video on this, Mark. You need to lay the hammer down.
Well, Corey, what's funny is that prior to sitting there on Championship Saturday in 2018, I always gave Notre Dame the pass. I didn't like that they didn't belong to a conference, but they always scheduled so difficult that I thought, you know what, they do go out there and schedule. They build a difficult schedule and they challenge themselves with a difficult schedule. But two things have happened since then. Number one, we've gone to a playoff system. And number two, in which the conference championship game is extremely vitally important. And number two, Notre Dame has given up its Big Ten ties to series with Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue, and given those up for the likes of Georgia Tech and Syracuse and Duke and all these other crappy teams that they play every year. And their schedules have gone from being top 5 to 10 in the nation to top 40 or 50 in the nation.
And Mark, they also played in 18 Syracuse, Vanderbilt, Ball State, and Navy. So, yeah, they go out and schedule. Okay, great. So does Oklahoma, and so does, I guarantee you, Oklahoma and Ohio State played just as tough of a schedule in 2018.
Oh, sure.
So I don't care if you scheduled well, because if you're in a conference, you don't have a choice. Mark, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything to bring you. They're not doing any favors to you as an Ohio State fan by going out and scheduling tough. They're doing what Ohio State's forced to do every year because they play in a good conference. They actually play in a conference. So I just think
you're right. This is not 1990 when we could list off like 15 or 20 major football schools that were independents. They're the last one. So get with the program.
Get in or get out.
But it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's everybody else's fault for not forcing them to do the right thing.
Correct. And now you have all these conferences. You know, they can see once again. Here we go. We're talking realignment, and the same program that we're attacking here is sitting king of the castle and basically controls the future of in a sense they control the future of college football, Mark, right? I mean, they swing the pendulum whichever way they want to swing. Well, how about this? How about instead of waiting to see what Notre Dame decides to do, if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, why don't the Big Ten SEC say, hey, let's throw a curveball at the Flailing Irish, and let's just leave them out of the party. You ain't gonna make a conference. You're not joining either one of these conferences. You're welcome to join the Big 12 or the Pac-12.
You're getting vindictive.
Well, I'm just saying that the conversation we've just had here has brought out vitriol, and I think it's ridiculous that Notre Dame control. I'm tired of hearing about them.
Corey, you also understand that the Big Ten and the SEC are not going to work together on this.
Well, I'm just saying,
whomever gets Notre Dame is going to say, we want Notre Dame and we want,
and that's the problem. Value. That's the problem. And they can take, and so they can, I just don't like the elite, the elitist mindset that university has. And as you said, it's everyone else's fault for allowing it. And I think we've talked about this. Notre Dame really hasn't been competitive in marquee games for quite some time, right? Can we agree on that? They've been competitive with the schedule they have, but once they play in a marquee bowl game, they really haven't been all that competitive.
No.
Especially under Brian Kelly.
They've gotten blown out most of the time in 30 years. They haven't won a major bowl game in 30 years, 1994 to be exact, so 28 years.
So in other words, not in my lifetime.
Yes, they have not. They are 0 and whatever the number is. It's like 9, 0 and 9 in New Year's 6 / BCS bowl games. I make this statement every so often when it comes up, and we dragged Notre Dame and the ACC through this situation. How pathetic is it of the ACC? Can you imagine the Big Ten or the SEC, those two conferences in particular? There's just too much pride. There's too much self-worth there to say we're going to allow a school to participate in 14 or 15 other sports, but not football. Number one. Then number two, we have a worldwide pandemic. And at a point in which the conferences all consolidated, went into silos, and only played each other, except for some games against some group of 5 teams out there, but generally just played in silos for that particular season, that we're going to throw them a lifeboat and allow them and save their season and allow them to abuse our conference, to just use us for 1 year so that they can play football, play in our conference. And actually, I was rooting for Notre Dame to win the ACC that year. I was hoping that they would win the ACC and make them look like complete fools for allowing them to play in their conference for 1 year, going in, winning the championship, and then leaving and saying, oh, we don't need you next year. Bye. We're back to doing our own thing. But they abused you and won your conference. It's
Mark,
just
what the ACC did in 2020 is like bailing out some hot chick that you can't ever get, hoping that, hey, if I post her bail, maybe she'll find me attractive down the road. Like
yes.
What a ridiculous move. No, I don't think the ACC. I think you and I both know that the ACC. I mean, I don't even understand why the Big Ten allows the Notre Dame to play hockey. Like, people forget, the Big Ten, the Notre Dame is a Big Ten member in hockey.
Yeah.
They're an ACC member in basketball. Do they have their toes in other conferences that I'm not aware of?
Well, no, they're committed to the ACC and all the sports that the ACC participates in. You know, women's basketball, baseball, softball.
And yet they're committed so that the ACC doesn't play hockey, I guess. I guess that's the case.
So.
Okay, well, I mean, what a ridiculous set of circumstances.
It is beyond. I had another analogy in me, but I forgot it now. But you hit on it.
Can you do me a favor? And I want you to cut this part and add this into the segment. I want you to cut this, and if you want me to do it for you, I certainly can. I want you to cut this segment out of this live stream. I want you to post it to your Notre Dame channel. Can you do that for me?
Oh, I'm way ahead of you. I was thinking of that minutes ago.
Okay.
But the last point I'll make is that I was ranting and raving. I don't think at that point we knew each other, but I was ranting and raving during that whole working through the pandemic and who's playing and who's not. Once the ACC extended that lifeboat to Notre Dame, I was pounding the desk, going crazy, saying, if I'm the ACC, I am telling them, you are playing football this year and signing a 20-year contract to play in our conference. That's the only way you're playing football this year. You have to sign a contract to play in our conference.
And you wonder, did the ACC do that because it feared that another conference would do what you just described? Were they willing to bail the pretty girl out of jail because they were afraid that somebody else is going to come along and win that pretty girl over? I mean, were they afraid the Big Ten was going to actually? Well, the Big Ten showed the Big Ten didn't show much of a backbone during 2020. No. We know that, but I guess what I'm saying is, what reason would you have not to do that? What you just described. Like, what a disadvantage would it be to the ACC to say it's all or nothing? Other than we fear that Notre Dame's going to latch onto another conference, and that other conference is going to win them over long term. What benefit did it do for the ACC to add them 1 year? What benefit did it give the ACC?
Notre Dame would have probably latched on to some other weak conference, probably the Big 12, and said, we want to play football this year. Can we join your conference for a year? And the Big 12 said yes.
So what advantage did it bring to the ACC at all? 2020 or long term to have Notre Dame in the conference 1 year? What did it give the ACC? Because if I was members of the ACC, I'd be ticked. It brought nothing. Yep. All it brought was another loss for a bunch of teams.
Yep. And the embarrassment of watching Notre Dame play in the ACC championship game.
It's embarrassing.
It is.
It's extremely embarrassing.
The yes, the lack of self-respect that the ACC has to allow themselves to be abused like that